Yoda is one of the most powerful yet underrated duelists in Battlefront 2, and even though some people are aware of how broken he is, many find it hard to play him to his full potential. In today's video, I'll be sharing strategies, secret techniques, tips and tricks, as well as essential information such as star cards, base stats, and ability mechanics to give you everything you could ever need to become unstoppable with Yoda in duels. Make sure to watch to the end for advanced secrets that nobody talks about. I'm making this video due to popular request, so if there's anything you would like to see next, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy the advanced dueling content I post and want to support the channel, hit the like button and consider subscribing. As any good hero guide, we'll start with Yoda's base stats. He has 700 health by default and can regenerate 250, which is the average. His stamina is solid, but it's also not anything crazy. He can attack 12 times and he can block 10 lightsaber swings. The stamina will have a 1 second delay before it regenerates, and from empty to full this will take 2.12 seconds. He has a rather slow swing speed, which is a commonly known fault in his dueling playstyle, and his swing damage without his star card is pretty average, with 125 from the front and 150 from the back. Moving on to abilities, which we'll cover briefly, he has 3 abilities like most characters in this game. His first, Unleashed, will deal 110 to 190 damage depending on how many force abilities or blasters he's absorbed. The range is pretty bad, but with the star card that we'll talk about later, the increase becomes much more formidable. The ability has a 12-second cooldown, and something that not many players know is that it drains stamina like crazy, usually about 4 or 5 swings. This can be good if your opponent is on low stamina and they might not realize it. You can use the ability and then lunge, but we'll talk more about this advanced stuff later. The ability can be quite buggy, and if your opponent is holding block while they get hit with the ability, they can often be knocked out of the ragdoll for some reason, recovering mid-air and allowing them to use abilities or swing, so it's important to be cautious of this when you're playing. His next ability, Presence, is a buff that grants him 150 health and lasts for 8 seconds. The ability breaks you out of any force abilities and makes you immune to any force abilities during the animation. You can use this in a predictive manner by predicting when your opponent will use their ability, which will prevent you from getting ragdolled completely and allow you to continue punishing. But again, more on the advanced stuff later. The ability can be used during pretty much any animation, but be careful to not be too slow with this, because if you press the ability mid-animation, in most cases, this will result in the animation for Presence queuing through afterwards, which can leave you vulnerable. Yoda's last ability is Dash Strike, which is a simple attack that will deal 85 unblockable damage. By default, he can store 2 of these attacks, and they each take 5.5 seconds to return. We'll swiftly move on to star cards, because this is where Yoda becomes a very formidable opponent already. The first card you need to run is Damage Reduction. Mathematically, this increases his health to 756, but the reason that it's actually really good is because it means that he can take 2 saber swings from the front, for example a double parry, and because he doesn't take the full damage, he can often regenerate it all back. The next card you need to run is Bonus Damage. With this card, he increases his swing damage from 125 from the front and 150 from the back, to 141 from the front and 164 from the back. This is higher than any character without star cards, and I would highly recommend it as it makes his hits much more punishing. Without the card, if you deal 2 hits to the front, they only deal 250 damage, so any dark side hero could fully regenerate this, meaning he isn't very powerful without it. The last card I'm going to recommend may cause some controversy in the comments, but I believe the most optimal choice for Yoda in duels is the card that extends his push range. Now, I know lots of you will be quick to think that the extra dash card is better, but it's actually not that useful. If you're consistently using your dashes to pressure and move around, then the ability to store a third one is completely redundant. Not to mention that the card makes it so you have to wait for an increased amount of time before the ability comes back. As well as that, the dash is already a very strong ability, so having a third one doesn't do as much for Yoda as his extended range card for his push will do. This card, by increasing the range to a formidable length, will now make his push much more versatile and usable. With the extended range, you can attack your opponent from a safe length, making it more usable as a defensive measure, and if you're looking to stack on some extra damage, the amount of times you'll catch enemies off guard with this ability with the extra range card is absolutely insane. Now, I will say that if you hit an enemy in this extra range bit, it's pretty unlikely you're going to get a follow-up because of how far away they'll be pushed. Now that we've covered his basics, let's start to get a bit more advanced and talk about the foundational moves that you'll need to know if you want to master Yoda in duels. I'll be talking about 4 of these. The first is the lunge. If you don't know what a lunge is, I recently made a very comprehensive guide on this mechanic, so I'd highly recommend checking that out if you're new or want to hone your skills as an experienced player. A lunge is what I'm showing on screen right now, where you lock onto your opponent and swing after them, whether you move away from them or they move away from you. It can be used to punish abilities, pressure, and all in all is a very effective and useful move that is the foundation of Yoda's dueling playstyle. On this topic, let's quickly talk about Yoda's swing animations. Most of them are pretty bad, but his lunge animation, his left dodge animation, his jump attack and animation cancel are all very good, fast, and effective in a duel. The rest of the animations are pretty slow and will leave Yoda quite vulnerable. Next, we have the animation cancel. I'm gonna make a guide on this soon, but since I haven't made a recently updated one in quite a while, I'm gonna quickly cover it in this video. There are two types of animation cancels you'll need to learn. First, the dodge one. This is quite simple. All you do is dodge, make sure you hold your block once you stop dodging, wait for a short amount of time, and then do a quick jump attack. If you time it right, the jump attack will cancel and you're left with a very quick, hard to counter and effective attack. This is great for Yoda, as since his base swing attacks are all quite slow, you can use this in replacement for a much faster and less predictable playstyle. The second type of animation cancel you'll need to learn is the lunge animation cancel. This works in a similar fashion to the dodge, except you'll have to do a lunge animation or a sprint attack instead of the dodge. The other change is that you have to be moving with your block being held while you do the small wait after the lunge. As you can see, if I'm not moving, I'll just do a jump attack and the animation isn't cancelled, but if I'm moving, the animation will get cancelled when you do the jump attack. The next mechanic you'll have to be familiar with is the delayed jump attack, or just the jump attack in general. The jump attack has an interesting hitbox that lasts for a very long time. What you want to do with this mechanic is use the final moments of this hitbox duration to attack your opponent. This means you're not left vulnerable at all, and it's very effective. All you need to do is be away from your opponent when you time the attack, usually running towards them works well, and then time it so that when you press swing, the swing animation will end as you come into contact with your opponent. If done correctly, the hit should register once you hit the ground, and then this will allow you to quickly move or chain it into another ability. With Yoda, you can't just sit and hold block, because he becomes very predictable, and you should be dashing, dodging, and jumping around for the duration of the duel. Because of presence, he's much more invulnerable to abilities like pull or choke or anything like that, so you can be a bit more dangerous with the way you move around in the duel. It's important not to become predictable with your movement as Yoda, and this is one of the big things that separates the good Yoda players from the great ones. Play around with it and find a playstyle that works for yourself in terms of your movement. Next, we'll move on to some advanced tips and tricks that you can implement when dueling with Yoda. To start, you are immune to force abilities if you are swinging and holding block. That means Dooku can't stun you, Kylo can't freeze you, and Vader can't choke you. You're literally immune. Not many players are aware of this, and it's a great way to bait out your enemy's abilities. However, if you get caught in the end or the beginning of the swing animation, you're not going to be immune. Of course, you do need to be holding block, and the timing can vary depending on ping difference, but it can be very useful to bait out enemies and makes his pressure much more dangerous, since you can lunge and not be worried about getting caught out by a force ability. Next, this one is a bit more well known, but you can use dash strike to lunge. And if you manage to land the dash strike, then the follow-up hit will also go through block. This is due to the stun lock mechanic, which basically means that if you get hit once, for a short amount of time, your block won't work, so you can get hit a second time. By performing a double parry into a dash and then strike through block, this can suddenly allow you to get 4 hits, and then even potentially a 5th one if you follow up with another dash. Yoda doesn't have many combos, but this is a very powerful one. When regarding Yoda's push and its inconsistent nature, with the enemy often blocking after getting hit, it's often better to dash after a successful push and then chain it into a lunge. This is because even if the opponent does stand up in mid-air, the dash will still hit them or at least get you close enough to chain it into a jump attack. If you don't dash and then lunge, there's a great chance that the lunge won't connect and then you'll be left vulnerable in his slow animation for an advanced opponent to punish. One last little trick is that most Dooku players will try and use Expose Weakness when you pop Presence. If you didn't know, this ability cancels out all the bonus health. However, I like to sometimes use Presence for the purpose of baiting out Expose Weakness, since this ability leaves you vulnerable. You can then lunge onto your opponent to get one hit and then even chain it into a dash strike. We've talked a lot about what Yoda can do, now let's bring it all together by talking about the playstyle that you should follow when dueling as him. Before we begin this breakdown, I want to quickly bring up the idea of pressure, as this is a cornerstone of how you should play the character. Pressure is a pretty abstract concept, but it essentially involves you attacking your opponent relentlessly when they're on low stamina or low health. This is great as Yoda, since you can chip away at their health by attacking them with dash through block, and you can lunge onto them with his great lunge animation if they're on low stamina. You'll hear me say pressure a lot, and if you're not familiar with that term, this is what I'm referring to. So let's say you've just started dueling against your opponent. What should you do as Yoda? Well, to start, you should not be going for parries at the beginning of the duel. If you miss a parry, or if your opponent plays smart and they just don't parry against you and let you swing against their block, you'll be left vulnerable in your slow swing animation. So, don't parry at the beginning, you should play passively at first, and if your enemy tries to parry against you, just let them swing at your block. When I say play passively, I don't just mean sit there with your block. Throw in some animation cancels, jump attacks and dashes, and do some of that movement we talked about earlier, but not anything too risky to start. You want to be trying to observe their timing and when they like to use their abilities, as Yoda is all about catching your opponent when they least expect it and then punishing their vulnerability. So, once they start getting aggressive, their stamina will drop low. This is where you want to have your push handy, as you can use it to drain away that final bit of stamina and then start pressuring. What's important is not to back off too far from your opponent when they're attacking you, as you want to be close enough so that if their stamina drops too low, you're there to punish. You want to get those 2 hits off the first lunge, which will really tip the duel in your favour. You'll see this in most of my duels as Yoda, that I play for these 2 hits when they drop their block trying to get their stamina back. Then you follow it with dash strikes, potentially into another hit with that lunge technique we talked about, and if they have force ability that can stop you from pressuring, remember that you have presence. Don't forget that you're immune to force abilities if you're swinging and holding block. If you don't manage to get a kill from the pressure, then simply do the same thing as you were doing before, except now it's totally fine to parry, since the health advantage will mean that they're more cautious and they won't just be waiting for you to swing. They'll probably be backing off, scared of your dash strike. So parries are totally okay if you're at a health advantage, but if your health is the same, and especially if you're at a health disadvantage, then I would not be going for parries. You essentially repeat this cycle of pressure and parrying at this point, and I will say that the duel probably won't last much longer. Now, you don't have to follow everything I just said word for word, but if you're wondering what to do as Yoda and you're just sitting there holding your block, try playing like I've just described, and I promise you that it will probably go better than you expect. Also take into regard your own skill factor. If you're not a confident enough player to go for things like hook swings or jump attacks like I've been showing, then don't do that. Just lean more on the idea of pressuring with lunging. Again, if you don't know how to lunge, I would highly recommend watching my lunging video, as this is the move that really makes Yoda a powerful dueling character. I hope this video has helped you out, and if it has, consider subscribing and leaving a like to support the channel. And with that being said, have a great day, and I'll see you out on the battlefront.